Hello friends, welcome back. We are going to be starting a new series called Concepts in AI ML and Their Application. Let's see what we are going to cover in this new series. Okay, Concepts in AI ML and Their Application. We are going to cover important topics in AI ML with focus on underlying ideas. So I am going to be explaining to you the ideas underlying some of these important topics that you hear about all the time. And secondly, I'm going to be telling you about how to apply them to solving practical problems. Okay, so applying the ideas to solving practical problems is going to be an important focus of this series. So what are the topics that we are going to cover? Well, these are the usual topics. Linear classifiers, regression, SVM, decision trees, stochastic gradient clustering, so on and so forth, neural networks, Markov models, so on and so forth. What is going to be new is our way in which we approach these topics. Okay, so like I said, the focus is going to be on underlying ideas, and how we approach these topics is going to be very different from what you encounter in typical online courses or certification courses. These topics, like I said, you may have heard of some of them at least. One topic that is usually not a part of courses like these is this one, entropy. Okay, entropy is typically not is not covered in courses on AI and ML, and the reason I have included it here is because it's just a wonderful topic and an important topic to read and understand. Okay, so this is what this series is going to cover. The target audience is, the typical IT professionals and interns that I meet. Now, I speak to a lot of interns and IT professionals. Either I am interviewing them or I am working with them. And what I realize is that although they are pretty good at, putting together solutions for public data sets, they could definitely benefit from a better understanding of the underlying ideas. So that is my target audience for this series. Okay, those of you who have seen my earlier series know that I have done what I called an introductory series for the layman, and that series was intended for non-technical people. I did a part of the series in Hindi, in the sense I used to translate important concepts into Hindi. I plan to do the same in this series as well. Perhaps to a slightly lesser extent, but we will continue to describe important concepts in Hindi as well. In that introductory series for the non-technical audience, people who are generally curious about AI ML, what we did was as follows. First of all, amongst the lay people, amongst non-technical people, there is a fair bit of skepticism about can a machine actually learn. So we addressed this question of what exactly is meant by machine learning and how it happens. We did that by taking help of a standard classification problem as an example, right? Classification problems we encounter frequently in our day-to-day life, and we took classification problems as an example to understand what exactly machine learning is, right? We looked at the importance of training data. We studied about what training data actually is and its importance in the machine learning process. And then we talked about how you could draw inferences from training data, right? So when we talked about drawing inferences, in particular, we talked about, for example, we talked about probabilities, right? Okay, probability. And we also talked about the idea of distance, So these two underlying ideas we took as examples, and we then saw how these two ideas could help you build inferences based on training data, right? And then we sort of convinced ourselves that machines could actually learn, and the idea of machine learning actually comprised building these inferences, and the underlying ideas there were probability and the idea of distance. So that is what we did in that introductory series. तो हमने जो पिछली सीरीज की थी उसमें हमने देखा कि मशीन लर्निंग ये चीज़ क्या होती है। उसमें हमने ट्रेनिंग डेटा के बारे में देखा था, पढ़ा था, और प्रोबेबिलिटी और डिस्टेंस ये जो जो दो आइडियाज़ हमने पढ़े थे, और उससे हमने इन्फरेंसेस निकाले थे, और उन इन्फरेंसेस के बेसिस पे हमने क्लासिफिकेशन प्रॉब्लम का सोल्यूशन ढूंढने की कोशिश की थी। सो this is what we did in our earlier series. We talked about machine learning, training data, inferences, and the underlying ideas of probability and distance. We relied a lot on relatable examples, right? So relatable examples is a big thing for me. Okay, I don't like to take random examples to explain ideas. And by relatable, I mean examples that you see around you, examples that you understand, examples that you keep running into frequently. And taking such examples is important because they help you reinforce the ideas to a lot greater extent. Now, in India, the most relatable things are Bollywood and cricket. Okay, maybe a little bit of politics. So all our examples were built around Bollywood and cricket. And we use these examples to learn some of the underlying ideas and concepts. This is what happened in the earlier series. तो हमने बॉलीवुड और क्रिकेट से कई सारे उदाहरण लिए थे, और उनके बेसिस पे पिछली सीरीज में हमने कई सारे आइडियाज़ का स्टडी किया था. So if you are interested in looking at that series, I am going to put the link to that series of sessions in the description here below this video. That series ran for just barely 7 lectures, half hour each. And if you consider yourselves a beginner or a layman, or if you just want to understand how Bollywood and cricket can actually educate you on some of the underlying ideas in AI and ML, you may want to spend the time looking at that video series. I'll put the description I will put the link in the description below. This series, like I said, is going to be a little bit different. Its target audience is a little bit different. We are going to cover important topics in AI ML, slightly more advanced than what we did in the introductory series for the non-technical audience, right? So once again, this series is going to be a little bit more advanced than the earlier one. I would call it an intermediate level difficulty, and it's intended for IT professionals or interns, students, etc., etc. Okay. One question that is often asked is, why do we need to understand these concepts when online tools give you ready-made code? So as an example, why do I need to understand how linear classification works when I can get ready-made code from ChatGPT, right? Why not just treat linear classification as a black box, and why not just proceed to build a solution around it? So this is a good question. It's a valid question. And let's look at an example, right? Okay, so here we are. This is ChatGPT, and I'm just going to type, give me Python code for KNN classifier, right? Let's see what ChatGPT does. It quickly goes ahead and gives me the source code along with a brief description of what the KNN classifier is. So this is great. I mean, you have source code in Python, which you wanted, and you're all set. Why do you even need to know what KNN classifier does? Right? That's the question. तो सवाल ये था कि अगर चैट जीपीटी पे हमें पाइथन कोड मिल जाता है KNN क्लासिफिकेशन, तो उसके बारे में हम क्यों और जानकारी मिलाने की कोशिश करें? So the new focus, although ChatGPT may give you source code, The job of an AI engineer is no longer to just, write code for the KNN classifier. It's a lot more than that. It's no longer restricted to developing code for known algorithms. The new focus for an AI engineer is usually as follows, right? So the AI engineer is now expected to, first of all, identify and formulate a problem, right? I mean, this itself is not easy. Identifying a problem that can be solved with AI is itself a challenge, and then formulating it in a manner that can be easily solved. So this is the first challenge for an AI engineer. Secondly, data preparation. I mean, we have spoken extensively about how data preparation is important, and that's an important part of an AI engineer's job. The third step would be architecting the solution. Architecting the solution means putting together different ideas in a sequence that makes sense, and towards building the solution that solves your problem. So architecting the solution is the next step. Selection of tools. I mean, are you just going to be writing Python code, or are there other frameworks that you will use? That is another question that an AI engineer has to answer. So selection of tools. And finally, all implementations in AI, like we discussed in the earlier series, are likely to be iterative. So you may get a good solution, or you may get reasonable efficiencies in your first cut, but you typically always have to iterate, tinker around with your solution, try out new ideas to improve the efficiency, and therefore I say that your implementations are most likely going to be iterative. Now, if this is your job, then typically while you architect the solutions and iterate, you are going to need deeper knowledge of the basics, a deeper knowledge of the underlying ideas, and you cannot simply rely on canned source code that you get from ChatGPT. So this is the reason why an understanding of the underlying basics is still extremely important. तो हमें चैट जीपीटी से सोर्स कोड तो मिल सकता है, लेकिन जब आप अपनी कंपनी के लिए, आपके क्लाइंट के लिए जब आप सोल्यूशन डेवलप करते हो, तब आपको ये सोल्यूशन आर्किटेक्ट करना पड़ता है, बिल्ड करना पड़ता है, इटरेट करना पड़ता है, और इसके लिए अंडरलाइंग आइडियाज़ की जानकारी होना बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण होता है. तो दैट इज द रीजन व्हाई वी नीड टू डाइव डाउन. Okay, this series is going to require a little bit of background, just 12 standard background, 10 plus 2 background. You should have a basic knowledge of probabilities, basic knowledge of linear algebra, vectors, matrices, and so on, and calculus, integration, differentiation, finding the slope of a curve, so on and so forth. So these are all 12 standard, curriculum. And I expect that you would need to know these well for you to benefit from this series of lectures. Okay, a little bit about my style of introduction for those who haven't seen the earlier series. I extensively use handcrafted examples. Okay, handcrafted examples. By handcrafted examples, I mean I don't pick up examples that you would typically find on the internet or typically find in books. Okay, I consider examples to be extremely important in explaining these underlying concepts, right? And therefore I spend a lot of time developing examples that make sense to explain a particular topic. So I extensively rely on handcrafted examples that I develop myself. That is the unique feature of this lecture series. Okay. The second thing about my style of instruction is that I have a tendency to repeat myself. Okay. So repeat myself. I like to say the same thing in different ways. Hopefully that makes better sense to my audience. Now, let's get started. My next lecture will begin with my, the first topic. I'm not going to tell you what that topic is going to be. but I will start putting out these lectures one by one. So goodbye and see you in the next lecture.